This is Sports Charlotte, the podcast about sports in Charlotte. I'm Herb White, editor-in-chief of the Charlotte Post. This is Cameron Williams, staff reporter at the Post. It is Friday, August 1, 2025, and that can mean only one thing. Football season has started.
It started last night.
Yeah, well, it arrives in different ways. The NFL kind of gets started in late July. High school practices start today, technically, and colleges got underway. Well, Division I bowl championship
Or
folks
CSP folks.
Right. The top tier of the alphabet soup in college football got started this week. And one of those schools happens to be right here in our backyard, the Charlotte 49ers. Tim Albin, the first-year coach, is running his first fall camp. You went out for opening day and impressions.
It was the first day. A lot of shakiness from what little bit of practice media were allowed to see, which we had to go back to our cars. I'm not going to get down that rabbit hole. The quarterback decision still to be determined. It's up in the air. There's not, I don't think any three of the quarterbacks that are, I guess, prospective candidates to be the starter have put enough good film, if you will, on the field to show that they're a step above the other. I do think Loftus and Harrell are a little bit better than Wilkie, but right now I think it's anybody's game between Harrell and Loftus. Running back room is going to be, I know I wrote it in the story, but it's going to be running back by committee. We saw several running backs take snaps with Don Chaney being ineligible. Now there is still hope to try to get him eligible, but as of Monday, he was not on the roster. Those are just a few impressions. I think Albin is, he said that they're on schedule, they're just not ready yet. But it's going to take a lot for them to get to where they need to become game ready, or to be game ready against the App State in that opener.
Biggest gaps are what, other than quarterback? And I found it interesting that when the 49ers announced their media day, that they put in the caveat, this will be your only time to talk to all three quarterbacks before basically an embargo cascades upon the program where none of those folks will be made available until a starter is named. Now, what happens if that goes up until opening week?
We just don't get to talk to any quarterbacks. And they're gonna roll out there at Bank of America, and the first person we see, all the media up here in the press box will be.
I just find that strange. And I understand, sort of, you don't want this to become a distraction. But when you are in the middle of a rebuild, coming off a less than stellar couple of years, why the secrecy?
Yeah, like I've said before, Coach Albin is so different from Biff Poggi that maybe it's rubbing media the wrong way. Maybe that's just how he has always been. Maybe that's how he was with media in Ohio, what media they did have covering the Ohio program. So I don't know that, or I don't know what that dynamic was, but he's definitely keeping things close to the vest. And I said it since he was hired, and he tends to keep things close to the vest. And so that's his coaching style. That's the way he wants to deal with us media folk. Nothing I can do to change it, but I'll be asking a lot of questions to the quarterbacks come Monday. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, because there's going to be all kinds of questions. You can't help but wonder. And if quarterback is the most important position in all of football, that question is going to stay there until an answer is made. And then even if you try a starter out on week 1 doesn't mean he's going to be the starter week 11 either.
Mm-hmm.
And so that consistency, you're hoping for the best, but consistency could be an issue. Injury could be an issue. Or it could be one dude just grabs the job and doesn't let go and proves to be lights out, which makes it easier for everybody. But back to the original question. What other issues do you see with this group? Because it is new. It's a rebuilt roster. We're in a new day and age where roster building is an all-year thing.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows who'll show up when things finally settle in and you get started with the process of building a team.
Well, from what, like I said, we saw maybe 10 minutes of teamwork. It was, I mean, the practice part that media are allowed to see is only individual drills, like, position group stuff. So you don't really see the collective unit. But other than the quarterbacks, missing some throws, and there were quite a few of them, maybe receiver depth. I know having Sean Brown back from a season ago really helps as far as the, I guess, morale of the receiver room. But you lose Omega Blake, and he was one of the top receivers, at least in my opinion, in the American Conference. What was formerly the AAC, the AC now. That is going to be so weird to say. But nonetheless, I think receiver depth, but I mean, there's some guys that are going to be able to make impact. I don't think it's going to be like, or they're going to run the ball 90% of the time. So, yeah, that would be my other point of concern. But overall, the team's got playmakers. They've got playmakers on both sides of the ball, so I don't think that's really an issue. I just choose a quarterback quickly. I think that would be my biggest thing that I'm trying to implore. And I mean, I'm no coach, but the quicker you can figure it out, the quicker that you can get him game ready. Because right now, when you've got all three quarterbacks prepping for game one, and I don't think you can prepare your best if you don't know that you're going out there starting. That's just my thoughts.
And then I guess there's also the issue of the locker room itself.
Mm-hmm.
Who's going to be the leader? And if this side of the room thinks that this guy is it, and somebody else is thinking, well, maybe that guy is it, that perpetuates the issue as well, because you just don't know. But I agree with you. I think that if the faster you can figure it out, the better off you're going to be.
Yep. Monday of next week's their team media day, so all of us will, well, myself from the Post, will be out there talking with the quarterbacks, I'm assuming. It's the last time we'll get to talk with them. That email just struck me as very odd. It's like, okay, I think Albin gets the hint that that's the biggest topic we're really concerned about. So he's just like, okay, well, here's your free-for-all. Have at it. After that, no more.
That might be his biggest topic, too.
Yeah, that's probably one thing he's trying to figure out before he lets us vultures in on it. But at any rate, other football to be discussed. High schools.
Mm-hmm.
I know that's one thing we've kind of started up over the last couple of years, getting more involved in. Seem to get pretty good response, at least from our local community here in the Charlotte area. So 2 media days happened. First off, the Southwestern Athletic Conference, the SWAC.
Yeah, that's going to cause some confusion with a certain group of folks who are familiar with football. Not to be confused with the collegiate FCS conference that produced folks like Eddie Robinson, Walter Payton, Jerry Rice, those folks. This is strictly a high school thing, folks.
But it was kind of funny because Coach Jonathan Simmons at Palisades High School, Palisades being one of the teams in the conference, he's a CIAA guy, played at Smith, or Johnson C. Smith, that is. And I asked him, I was like, so, as a CIAA guy, what's it like playing in the SWAC now? And he kind of thought that was funny. But talking about Palisades, 8-4 last year, kind of jumped off the page a little bit after a few shaky seasons to start, because they're a relatively new team still under 5 years old. They really blossomed, if you will. I think they're a team that can be successful again this year, but as Simmons made it known, to be known as a winner, you have to do it over and over and over. Not just a one-hit wonder, and then you go back to having some losing season. You got to constantly win. I know when a friend of the post, Nate Wimberly, had me on one of his little sports shows last year, he asked me, like, who's going to be the surprise team? And I even said, I was like, I think Palisades could really shock some folks. They were like, what? Turns out it's nice to be right every now and again.
There is that benefit.
But overall, this conference, you look at Palisades 8-4, Audrey Kell 5-5, Providence 5-5, Rocky River 3-7, East Meg 1-9, and then obviously the new school, Valentine Ridge, was 0-11 last year. Top to bottom, what do you think of the conference?
There's room for improvement. And I think that's going to be one of the things to watch for, because now that all this realignment has gone on, it's like, okay, now you really do need a program to figure out who is who and who plays where. But I think that you've got to say Palisades is going to be your odds-on favorite. They're the only one who had a winning season last year in this group. But as we all know, high school football can change from year to year, depending on the competitiveness of the teams in the conference. And I think that at some point, maybe this year, we might actually see some parity here. Argykill fell off big time last year. And I think that might be the group most likely to give Palisades a run.
I'm 100% in cohorts with that. I think if you were having to make betting lines, yes, Palisades may be the favorite, but it's not nearly as large a margin as one might think, because people forget Audrey Kell was 2-3 close games away from being like 7-3 or 8-2 type. So one thing Greg Jachem was talking about, their head coach, the small things, the mental mistakes, the missed field goal because someone missed a blocking assignment and it got tipped, or just the key turnovers in critical times in a game that ends up costing you points in a critical time. So you're talking about a team that was easily playoff material, possibly could have won that conference, but they lost 2 critical games. You don't go undefeated in the conference, and Palisades went 5-1 and they won.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would look for with Argykill is not necessarily just to have a winning record. This is a program that has gotten to the playoffs, been impressive during regular season, and then fizzled out in the postseason. To me, that's where the leap needs to be made. I don't necessarily have a major concern with them being able to get to the playoffs. My concern would be, are you going to be able to win a couple of games? Because this is a group that, for whatever reason, has underwhelmed when the lights got really bright.
Well, because their first round matchup is always someone like a Mallard Creek or a Huff. And I mean,
well, these things happen. In order to win a state title, you're going to have to beat some good teams anyway. So you may as well get them early, because you know you're going to see them late.
That's true, but at the same time, I'm not going to put any team on some kind of pedestal, but recent, history shows Huff is better than Argykill.
Well, that's the point.
If they get to the playoffs and they have that matchup, I'm never going to pick AK over Huff. It's just not something wise to do. I mean, sometimes you just have to be a realist. Now, as a coach, you want to coach your guys up to be prepared to beat a team like that. But sometimes it's hard to beat guys that you got 3, 4, 5 guys going to D1 programs. It's just hard.
Well, on the other hand, Huff has managed to not win a state title either. and it is arguably one of the better outfitted programs in the county. They've got all this Division One talent and can't break an egg when it comes to getting out of the West. So there is that. So you can have great talent, but do you have a great team?
I mean,
Just saying.
yes, but I think both. I just think sometimes when great teams go head to heads, sometimes the other great team wins. I mean, you can't say that Grimsley the past couple of years hadn't been great teams.
That's true.
I mean, 2 state championships. Well, they technically got to a state championship and lost to New Bern, but New Bern had to vacate it. So
technically
by the NCHSA, there is no champion that year in 22, I believe, but Grimsley claims it.
Of course.
So moving down the conference, Providence, Rocky River, East Mac, Valentine Ridge. I mean, what are we thinking about the Panthers and then the Ravens? Because Providence is one of those teams. Like we're talking about as few as 3 years ago, and they were beating some teams that people were like they really shouldn't beat. I know they had Luke Bailey, an all-world receiver, running back that was, I mean, between catching and running the ball, he was averaging almost 300 yards a game all purpose.
Providence is an enigma.
Yeah.
You have talent, you have good coaching, and yet, again, you're talking about not achieving the results that should be coming out of that program. Is that going to change this year? I'm not so sure. I think Palisades is going to have just about everybody covered. Audrey Kell is going to be there. Providence, I'm not so sure because the results just haven't been there. Mm-hmm. And what has changed in order for them to get over that hump? I don't know.
The roster's gotten smaller.
And that means that you no longer have depth. Now, if you've got quality depth, but a smaller roster, that's one thing. But if you've got a smaller roster and the depth is not necessarily as good as what you've had in the past, that's a problem.
Yeah.
Rocky River is going to be similar, I think.
I don't know what to expect from Providence. I mean, I've known Wes Ward a few years now, and I know he knows ball, but I don't know if he can get the buy-in, because he even talked about in his kind of opening remarks how there's been some tiffs and stuff that they've had to work out in practice and stuff, and I'm like, man, already.
And it's high school.
Yeah. And I'm just like, okay, but overall, I think it's Palisades and Audrey Kell, then a step down to Providence. Rocky River, that's a team growing up when I was in middle school that people wanted to be like. So, can they get back there? That's my biggest question to you. Do you think they can get back to where they're winning? I'm not saying competing for state championship. I'm saying winning 7 or 8 games, making it 1 or 2 rounds deep into the playoffs. And how long? I mean, I'm not saying this year, but how long is it going to take to get back there? They've got a coach, Kenneth McClamrock. He's been around winning football in the past. And ultimately, he's trying to invest in the players more so for them as young men than football players. But what's it going to take for them?
When all is said and done, if you're a coach, the only thing you're going to be remembered for is winning and losing. That's just the brutal truth.
From the fan base standpoint. Maybe not as from the player standpoint.
Oh, well, now that's totally different. Yeah. Because if you have an impact on young people, that's always beautiful. But you could be the guidance counselor and have an impact on young people. You can be the principal and have an impact on young people. If you're hired to coach, sure, you can have an impact on young people. But on the other hand, you're also there to win ball games. So it's not exactly apples to apples. Building that program, I think, will require buy-in. And it's not going to happen overnight. So if you're talking about 2-3 years, you have to be able to convince not just the kids that you have on the roster. You've got to convince the rest of that campus that you're on to something good. Where those kids who are not playing football will at least entertain the question, should I give it a try? And I've seen where other programs have been down in the dumps, that legacy programs that have been laid asunder by disinterest or the student body changes or whatever. And a coach comes in with the right amount of charisma, machismo even, and gets everybody excited about what is possible. And then kids start to turn out. And then it's like, oh, well, even the middle school kids can't wait to get there so that they can try out for the varsity. And so a program like Rocky River that is not that type of legacy program, it may take a little bit longer. I think if they can get it turned around in a couple of seasons, that's good stuff. Yeah. But it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen this season. Sorry.
Fair enough. Last two teams in the conference, East Meck.
Woo.
Don't do that. That's just
rude. But I'm old enough to remember when East Meck was the stuff.
I'm not.
But well, that's the difference between you and me. I'm old enough to remember that.
Well, quick pivot. When I talked with Garinger, who's in the one of the other conferences, I asked the kids. I was like, "What do y'all know about Garinger?" And they were all like, "It's a bad football team. They're undisciplined. This, that, and the other." And
they weren't wrong.
And they weren't wrong. But I'm like, you do realize this is a team like back in the 50s and 60s. They were like really good, right?
And into the 70s and maybe even the 80s.
But East Meck similar. I know Coach Lenny Sanders has been there a while now. He said one thing he's doing this year compared to years past is he's kind of taking a hands-off approach. He's told some of the guys that he's got as team captains and leaders, like, look, y'all have to be the ones to be disciplinary to the ones that are late, make them finish reps. If they don't finish reps, make them run laps, just things like that. And he says it's been beneficial for him to kind of step back and be able to enjoy the actual coaching process rather than feel like he's being the disciplinary. Well, not necessarily baby, but just being constantly the disciplinary factor every time someone messes up. And so he's just taking that hands-off approach, letting the seniors lead, and he's going to see where it takes them.
I think that's a novel approach, and good teams have that format where your players, if they've bought in, become the leaders. If your team has not, then somebody is going to have the heavy hand when it comes to making sure that you play some disciplined football. Ultimately, though, especially in the high school level, you don't have that luxury to be able to corral all these young people and make sure that they play disciplined football. You have to have the staff in place to help you along, and it really helps if you've got players who understand that you're all in it together and you're playing as a unit. And I think that sometimes when you look at some of the programs that don't have that, you can tell right off the top, like, oh, no, that's not going to work. It is one thing to not have a lot of physical talent, but when you throw in that disinterest and I'm only out for myself, that's when you start getting train wrecks where programs are only generating 1 or 2 wins a season on a consistent basis. That's the wrong kind of consistency.
Oh, yeah. Then the newest school in the city.
And it showed.
Valentine Ridge. Look, I think it's my job to cover these schools. I'm not going to be disrespectful to any of them because every single one of them are trying their best to win football games. That I can get behind. It was a brand new school. Your point, snickering and all, it did show. Just 37 points scored, shut out 6 times last year. didn't have a lot of players on the roster that fit the football mold.
They look like middle schoolers in spots.
Well, didn't have a single senior on the roster last year. This is the first time you'll have a senior class. One thing Coach Tyson Fernandez, the head man there at Ballantyne Ridge, said is that it's neat for him as a head coach to have the opportunity to kind of build something from the ground up. He knows the history or the legacy that teams like Audrey Kell and Providence have had in the past, and Ballantyne Ridge, obviously being brand new, doesn't have that. So it's cool for him to be able to try to get these kids to a place where they can build something like that. And ultimately, he said he was really excited to see the work they put in the weight room, on the practice field in the offseason. I mean, they returned 98% of their production from last year.
Which wasn't much, but it's
Easy.
back.
But he said that was one of the biggest changes, just his players' bodies. He said they're starting to look like football players. He said their first game against Fort Mill last year, you would have looked at the team photo and you'd been like, wait a minute, those are football players? And he said it with just such a happy-go-lucky kind of thing, but I'm like, that's kind of sad.
Yeah, but then again, those kids were probably just glad to be on the team because it's a memory that you'll never, ever forget. I was on the very first team at this school. I scored the very first point. I threw the first pass. I made the first tackle and all that other stuff. And so it's monumental. But 37 points in the season, that's not good. But they also know that that's not good. And the good news about that is they're bound to be better because they can't be any worse.
Yeah. And Coach Fernandez also made it a point to note that. He's like, look, all the firsts, they're out of the way now. They've had that first season kind of hurrah, if you will.
Well, that first win is still out there.
That's what I asked him. I'm like, how hungry is this team? You've mentioned all the firsts that you've done now. You got out of the way. Got to get that first win. And all the players said in unison, very. It was like, there's some drive there. And that's one thing that you like to see. Because after let's put it this way. And I know Garinger has had a culture shift, and we'll talk about that here in a minute when we talk about the Greater Charlotte Athletic Conference. But you never, at least till this season, have gotten that feeling of Garinger being ready to
beat anybody.
Yeah. Now it's a little bit different story. But that's the SWAC conference. I wrote my story in the order I thought they would finish. That is Palisades, Audrey Kell, Providence, Rocky River, East Meck, and still growing, second year Ballantyne Ridge.
Okay.
So now as we shift over, we are getting a little heavy, but we'll get through it. The Greater Charlotte Athletic Conference. This is one of the top heaviest conferences I think I've seen in quite some time. And like I said, I'm not going to show disrespect. I know all these coaches very well. But this conference seems to be like huffing the rest.
Well, could be. Okay. I won't lie. It is.
But, okay, look. You got Huff 12-2 last year. Lost their first game to Rock Hill Northwestern. Great team. They won their 4A state championship down in South Carolina. So, no, the way in which they lost that game, being up by, I think, 20-something points at one point and then losing by a point, that kind of stung and maybe resonated. But overall, it's not a bad loss on the schedule.
Oh, no, not at all.
Rattle off 12 straight wins, beat champions like West Charlotte along the way, and then you get to the playoffs, and here comes big Greensboro Grimsley. Beat them 3 straight years. I mean, you talk about a wall that you can't scale. That seems to be Huff's nemesis.
Ahab's whale.
There you go. They won't have to go through Grimsley this year.
Fortunately.
Huff's 8A, Grimsley 7. Now, Weddington will still have to see Grimsley. But nonetheless, I think this could be Huff's year. I say that with cautious optimism because I know Sometimes when Huff gets deep into the playoffs, they tend to underperform. I think Baker's got Coach Deshaun Baker, first reference, has got his guys understanding from a fundamental standpoint, like that is the time of the year you have to play your best football, and you can't make the mental mistakes that they've made over and over. Because he's like, if you look at the games against Grimsley the last 3 years, they didn't have turnovers. They didn't have stupid mental mistakes. They didn't have illegal procedures. They didn't have all these things that we're doing to inflict pain amongst ourselves, costing us to winning the football game. And he's like, I think that's simply the difference. Talent-wise, talent for talent, other than them having the number one quarterback in the country at Grimsley, across the board is pretty equal. So he says he thinks more so what they were doing to themselves penalty-wise, making inaccurate passes or just being loose with the football, just different things like that are ultimately what cost them that game last year. It's one thing they're hoping not to do this year. And they've got one of the best quarterbacks in the city. Not a lot of people know a lot about him because he played behind Trey Blakeney. But Ethan Royal, it's going to be nice. I'm going to go on record right now saying he's the best quarterback in the city.
Okie dokie.
Sam Grinder's going to call me after that one because I know he loves his quarterback, Jamori Nichols. But Ethan
They
Royal,
all
nice.
love them until they don't. But I think that what you're saying about Huff is true. But haven't we heard this before? Somewhere? It's like Huff is always next year's champion. And I'm not saying that to throw shade. I'm just saying that as a matter of course. It's a matter of fact. Everybody raves about Huff's talent, both sides of the ball, every single year. And they make runs, but they can't get out of the West. When you talk about Ahab's Whale, instead of Grimsley this year, let's just substitute getting out of the West. That's Ahab's Whale for now. Getting out of the West. Can you play for a state title? And when they do that, I'm going to personally throw flowers on campus. And
Well, I mean, if you're talking about 8A, I know Sam didn't necessarily want to play Huff in the non-conference because they were going to meet in the playoffs probably anyway. But, I mean, out of the 8A West, I think it's West Charlotte's or Huff's to lose. And based on recent results in the past couple of seasons, I mean, Huff's had West Charlotte's number.
Well, but again, we're talking about the playoffs.
Yeah.
And that is where legacies are built. And don't get me wrong, Huff has put together magical regular seasons to beat the band. And for whatever reason, they cannot get out of the West. That's all there is to that.
Coach Baker, you call him. Don't call me.
Hey, I'll field your call, and you know what I'm talking about because the results don't lie. Now, if I'm lying, you call. If I'm not lying,
Don't call.
don't call me.
Moving on down the conference. Myers Park. Really, by Myers Park standards, a failure of a season last year. 4-6. And we're talking about a team that's just a handful of years removed from deep playoff runs, being 9-1 one year, 13-2 one year, something like that. Back when they had Drake May.
Yeah, well, don't get me started on underperforming.
Yeah, they're two peas in a pod sometimes, but and I know, believe me, we understand that Myers Park had some issues eligibility issues
yes,
going on during that time.
Let's keep it real.
So take it for what it's worth. Would they have won that many games if they weren't housing several players at the same
roof?
address? And
they are brothers, man. Brothers, I say.
He's in rare form today. But Coach Chris James, he's like, he put it blunt. He's like, we're going to be better than 4-6. He's like, that's just not something that we ever aspire to be.
That should be expected.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what he was alluding to. He's like, it wasn't a great year for us. He's like, it's a part of the game. Things happen, this, that, and the other, but that's not the Myers Park standard. Um, this year, they're a very senior laden group, 27, if I remember correctly. And so James says the goal this year is and it's odd because you come off a 4-6 season. They're like, well, let's just improve on that. No, he's like, we want to play deep into November, get to December. So there's lofty goals being set by the head coach. Will the players be able to live up to it? Moving on, South Mecklenburg, Coach Joe Evans, been around
For
quite some time. I actually caught up with one of their players, the senior quarterback, Carter Gillis, and he's like, look, we're hoping for a big season. After a 3-7 season, you can technically have a worse season, but he's like, he doesn't feel like this group is nearly as disconnected as last year's group. He's like, we got some playmakers. They got a solid group of linemen. He's like, overall, the spirit around the team this summer, as they get ready to start fall practice, it's a lot higher. So they're hoping for a big year. What's a big year for South Meck? 6-4.
6.
Yeah.
That doesn't, because you would think that you'd be able to beat the bottom teams, the Garringers, the Hopewells, the West Mecks. So if you have some success there, you're already in a good spot. So then you pile on some non-conference or cross-conference wins. I don't know if they're ready. Well, but then again, they may not be that far from Myers Park.
No,
I'm going to step out and say that right now. I don't think they're that far apart. And Joe Evans is a really good coach.
He is. Yeah.
And so 6, I think, is about right. If you really want to feel aspirational, 7.
Yeah, 7-3. That'd be tough.
Throw that man a parade.
Yeah, for real. So then you go from south to the west, West Mecklenburg. One of my favorite coaches just to sit around and just shoot caution or send caution to the wind with. B.D. Waddell is one of the most fun guys just to talk to, just talk ball with. And that's why, I mean, in a way, you have to pull for a guy like that to be successful because he knows the game. And he says this year there's a bit of a rejuvenated excitement around the team. 3-7 last year, a team that's been rebuilding for a while.
Just can't get any consistency in terms of keeping coaches in place.
Keeping coaches or keeping players. Because in this era, I asked several different teams this question, in this transient era of high school football, what's it mean to play for the name on the front of your jersey? And a lot of them gave very, very detailed answers, like, we're a family here, the typical answer you would think to get. But at West Meck, I mean, how many players have West Charlotte gotten over the last couple of years from West Meck?
It's a feeder program.
And so the guys there, they all gave me the same answer. It's nice to be able to call, this guy, knowing he's going to have my back or knowing he's going to be able to give me advice. And just beyond the sport of football, once they graduate, just having that brotherhood of guys that they know that they can call on. That was kind of the answer West Meck was given. And so I know BD is excited. He's like, the expectation every year is to be competitive and to be able to get to a state championship. How real that expectation is?
First things first, BD. Get above 500. Qualify for the playoffs.
He's like, he wants to practice on Thanksgiving, win the conference. He's like, those things that they're always preaching in the program. So you got to give it to him. He's not backing down, saying, well, if we can get 4 wins after we won 3, he's shooting high. He didn't hold back in scheduling either. One of the tougher non-conference schedules as well. For relative to talent level, I mean, we're talking Ashbrook, Statesville, Olympic, and then Corby and Community School, and then West Charlotte in the non-conference league. Yipes.
They're going to learn a lot about themselves from that West Charlotte game, if nothing else.
Well, West Charlotte's the toughest team they'll play, but Statesville's no slouch. Statesville was a team that really shocked people last year. Ashbrook Green Wave. Everybody knows about the history of Ashbrook. And then, Olympic. The easiest game in that non-conference is probably Corby and Community School.
Yeah, no
so,
doubt.
Moving on down. Hopewell. These last two teams both have new coaches. Brandon Sneed for Hopewell came from Mallard Creek as the offensive coordinator, replacing Brandon Gentry, who went back to Cabarrus County where he used to coach. He's taken over Hickory Ridge. But when it comes to Brandon Sneed, this Hopewell team has not had a winning season, I believe, 15 years.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Barack Obama was president.
Barack Obama was 2 years into his first term.
That's a history lesson.
Yeah. So I was in the fourth grade. I want to keep making it a little bit more extreme, but they're one of, like I said, one of two teams that have a new head coach. Sneed feels like the conference, like the GCAC, having several teams kind of all together. We've already mentioned Huff there, but based on the rest of the results from last season, he said it's kind of nice because it provides a chance for different teams to separate themselves. This quote I thought was really good. He says, when you really believe in something, believe you have a shot, it's probably going to help increase your team's belief. He said it's hard to go out there and feel like there's not much of a chance of success when you're going out there. If say for example, Hopewell got lumped in with West Charlotte, Independence, Butler, Chambers, and Mallard Creek. So I feel bad for North Meck because North Meck's in that conference. But overall, I don't know what success would look like for Hopewell. Not a winning season in 15 years. And
500.
Yeah, if they could get to 500, that'd be a big, big step in the right direction.
And a couple of upsets.
Yeah.
Must happen along the way for them to get there.
For sure. And last but not least, my man Jupiter Wilson at Garinger. 0-10 in 2024.
You talk about a program that has been on the skids for a while.
5th consecutive winless season.
That's a long time to be winless.
And I know in the story that I wrote back in January when Jupiter was hired, I think they had like 13 or 14 winless seasons in their last 24.
That's a lot of losing.
Jeepers Creepers. So, I'll go ahead and break it down. Jupiter Wilson, he knows what winning football is. He's won a conference championship in Cabarrus County. He was actually the recipient of the Panthers high school NFL Coach of the Year. So, he knows how to win. This is a unique challenge for him because not only are you trying to win football games, but you're trying to get people more interested in playing Garinger football.
More interested.
Or just, okay.
Interested.
You're talking about several of the past seasons during spring workouts and stuff, maybe having 10 to 11 kids show up. He's like, this summer they're having...
You can't run a soccer practice with 11 kids.
Right. He's like, you're having, 35 to 40 and, 40... He said 43 showed up for their first day of summer workouts, he said. So...
Oh, that's a great turnout for Garinger.
Huge. Compared to years past. He said one of the most inspiring things to him, what kind of drives him, is just seeing the appreciation that his kids have. Coming from Hickory Ridge, where if you don't know the demographic of Hickory Ridge, it's a bit of a snooty school.
Okay.
It's right in my backyard, but he's won conference championships in the past, and he says sometimes people can expect that of you rather than appreciate it. He says, but his players at Garinger are seeing and believing, whether it be buying them gym clothes for gym class during the school year, or picking them up in the church bus or whatever to bring them to practice. He's seeing, or the kids are seeing, that he's investing in them, and in turn, they're doing what he's asking them to on the football field. It's like a match made in heaven. How many wins will that look like?
Well,
I don't
one
know.
would be good.
One would be fantastic.
Yeah.
But just looking at their schedule, they've got some winnable games. I know they start off with, I think it's Winston-Salem Prep or whatever. Winnable game. They're not anything to write home about, and I'm not being disrespectful to Winston-Salem Prep, but I think they scheduled with intent. Winston-Salem Prep was 1-8 last year. A lot of blowouts. Lost to teams like Corby and Community, Pine Lake Prep, Mountain Island Charter, a lot of these charter preparatory academies. So they scheduled that one to try to get a win.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like they're scheduling that one to challenge them much. But then they got Lake Norman Charter, East Meck. I know in years past, East Meck, their lone win would always be against Garinger. I think that game will be a little bit more competitive this year. Then they got Ballantyne Ridge.
Hey, that's a toss-up.
They have... I'm being respectful.
But I think that when you talk about scheduling, there are games that you could win. However, Garinger's culture over the years has been so far down on the totem until even if there were winnable games, they still couldn't win them because of whatever it was, whether it was lack of depth, lack of coaching, just whatever. The culture surrounding Garinger football has been so, okay, keep it real again, has been so bad, you can't win those types of games. And so to me, again, going back to coaches who have the machismo, the personality, the whatever it is, that magnetism that lets folks know I'm here to win games, get this campus excited, and ultimately get these kids out here to not just consider football, but actually commit to it. If Jupiter Wilson can pull that off and get some results this year, I think Garinger can win 1 or 2 games, because it's not like he's in a conference where he can't win any games.
Yeah.
Who's to say he can't beat a Hopewell or West Mecklenburg? But you've got to be able to convince folks that you're the man for the job and you can attract talent that will go out and win you some games.
That's well said. I'm trying to figure out, because I told Jupiter, and I think for our mission here at the Post, it would be beneficial to cover a Garinger game. I wonder which one I want to go to, though. And I'm gonna have to honestly print off some of these team schedules and kind of align them up, because we want to be at the best game in town for the most part. But I'm looking at either that Winston-Salem Preparatory Academy or that Ballantyne Ridge game. I think for the overall, for the localness, that Ballantyne Ridge game on the 12th, but I think the 12th might be West Right. We'll get
figure it out.
We'll get into that.
We'll figure it out.
Not like you need to know what my schedule is going to look like in a month. But at any rate, I'll break us down since we've talked way too long. Visit thecharlottepost.com, become a donor or a subscriber, or both. Subscribe to our weekly sports newsletter, or all the newsletters. There's one that comes out every day of the week except Friday, right?
No. Health is on Monday.
So every day of the week.
No.
Oh.
Health is on Monday. Sports is on Thursday. News is on Friday. And we also have our QCFC newsletter that runs periodically.
That was the one I was mixing in there.
Yeah.
But at any rate, subscribe to those. You don't want to miss those. It gives us a great brief synopsis of what you missed in that particular section that week. Thanks for watching and listening. Have a great weekend. It's August. Football's right around the corner. Get excited. That's Herb, the editor-in-chief. I'm Cam, the staff reporter, the do-it-all kind of guy. Have a great weekend.